You're resorting to headphones. Okay.
Yep, that should solve the echo.
Yep. And your
Actually,
sound?
could be the original sound settings was the problem too.
Yeah, I should. Well, I should keep. I've got to remember to turn the original sound off for speaking, on for kirtan.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I met a very good harp player the other day. Another very good harp player, I should say.
Who's that?
So there's a Magi Abaya. I don't know if you know him. He's
Mm-mm.
Indian origin, grew up in Anandamaga, works for Apple,
Okay.
but he lives here now. I've known him since he was a little boy, but he's all grown up now. And he just got married. And his wife is Italian, and her sister plays harp. And at the wedding, I was at the wedding on Saturday.
Okay.
I was conducting the wedding actually,
Mm-hmm.
and his wife's sister was playing a full orchestral harp, which
Right.
sounded great.
Do you remember the wife's sister's name?
I No, but I asked her if she knew you, and she doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, we don't all know each other, but
I
I'm.
figured. I thought she might, but she said, there's
Yeah.
big harp. There's a lot of harp players kind of know each other, but she didn't know you.
Yeah. Well, and the orchestral kind and mine kind don't always mingle. So.
Well, they're in Redwood City. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that's near Menlo Park.
That's
So
close enough. Yeah.
yeah. So, folks, we're chatting about music here. No surprise there, especially with Karun and I are both here. What's almost that's pretty likely. Um, yeah, well, there's really not many to take us tonight. Let's see, but uh, yeah. So I enjoyed some of her music a lot. She was playing, sort of fairly well known tunes,
Mm-hmm.
some classical pieces, even pieces I used to play on the piano. And it sounds that orchestral harp really sounds like a piano, doesn't it?
Um,
More like a
I,
piano playing.
I'm dying to ask, but you wouldn't know, right? It's sort of like asking, was it a Taylor or a Martin? It was probably a Lionel Healy, and was it a 23 or was it a 17? And
No
anyway,
idea.
never mind. But yeah, a lot of them, in general, the orchestral harp has a higher string tension, so it
Yeah,
will tend to sound a little more like a piano than mine.
yeah, it definitely sounded more like a piano
Yeah,
than
the
than,
the
than yours.
playing technique can influence that too.
I see. Well, she's Italian, so the very sort of classical, you know.
Hmm.
And Viola, my Abaya's new wife, her name is Viola, and she teaches the violin. Her
Right,
sister plays
right.
classical harp. They're all very Italian, sort
Yep,
of
yep,
cultured, and they make extremely good Italian food. So that was
yeah.
yeah.
Which would tend to have garlic and onions in it.
Not that day, but the whole everything was sentient. It was
Okay.
wonderful. Yeah. So that's the news. So let's since we're just a little gang, why don't we all check in and say hello? Karun, why don't you, since you've got your mic on and you've
Um,
your echo, tell us something from your week or
hmm.
2 weeks or something interesting?
Well, let's see. I bought a one-person backpacking tent that arrived today, but it's too small. I I bought it online and I didn't check the dimensions closely enough, and I'm too tall. So I hopefully I can take it back.
That was it? The highlight of your week?
Well, that's what's on my mind because it just came today. Um, so yeah, I'm on the track of some interesting laser physics, but we'll see.
That's going to be beyond our reach, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, it would be proprietary anyway, so I couldn't tell you.
Oh, okay. You'd have to tell us if you did, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's,
I haven't done any. I'm expecting to go hiking on Friday, but I haven't done any hikes lately.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
very nice. And let's hear from Kailash. What you up to, Kailash?
Um, so my birthday's this week actually.
Oh,
It's Saturday, and it's already off to a great start. I got like a nice raise at work.
oh, that's a
Yeah,
serious birthday present. That's the gift that keeps on giving, right?
Yeah, and then my apartment complex told me they're going to install a washer and dryer in my apartment for free, of no extra charge. So I don't have to go to the laundromat anymore. So I'm pretty excited about that.
That's very nice upgrade.
Yeah, it's only Tuesday, so let's
Only
see.
Tuesday, right? Very nice. Cool. How about you, Anushila?
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
So basically, I'm a fitness instructor. I just acquired a few more yoga classes that I teach, and I'm back to teaching strength training because that went away for a little while.
Okay, good. Is that
So
it's all online still?
no.
Oh, you're doing it in person?
Well, I've been teaching yoga outside since June, but now gyms are open. So now I could teach strength training using a barbell.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Very nice. We just lost some. Oh, I know who we lost. Okay. Cool. Oh, so from my side, what's been happening? Just trying to pick which one. Oh, I had a really nice. I used to teach a course at UC Berkeley in the East Bay, a meditation. It was called Meditation and what is it? The Meditation, a technology for conscious evolution. And over the 4 years that I taught it, that was 2 semesters a year, I think I had more than 300 students. And I really enjoyed it. That was a while ago. It was from 2011 to 2014. And so I sometimes hear from my former students, and some of them got initiated, or they're meditating, or they've came to retreats, and I know some of them really quite well. So I've been in touch with a couple of them this last week. It's whom I haven't heard from for ages. It's been really great. I had a really long conversation with one of them yesterday. she's yeah, she contacted me because she wants to get back into her meditations. She's been sort of missing the feels like the spiritual part of her life she's been neglecting it, and she's really missing it. And she was saying how that time when she was in the university and we were having like 2 sessions every week with a big group of students, she said it was really one of the best periods of her life. And we had a really good conversation, and she's actually got a role in a feature film acting. So she's got a new little a new kind of career breakthrough. So that's kind of interesting. You don't usually these days you hear people sort of losing their careers.
Yeah.
This kind of the opposite. and another friend of mine, she wasn't one of my students, but she's a young professional. She was working with Disney, but Disney's trying to figure out how to survive, and they basically decided they're gonna go big on Disney Plus, and because the parks they're losing hundreds of millions of dollars, I think, on the parks right now. But her job was she was making robots. She's a robot engineer. So they finally furloughed her. No, they finally actually she finally lost her job at Disney. She's been furloughed for like 5 months, getting health benefits and unemployment benefit and that. But now they finally, I think they decided that they're not going to keep that division open or whatever. So she might have a job at SpaceX. So she might be making robots for them to go to space, I guess. I'm not sure. But anyway, she gets to play with her robots. So she seems to be doing all right. So I'm sort of happy to see these young folks getting creative opportunities. It's kind of neat. Lots of other stuff happening with our planetary leadership training. That's really that's a big thing. We just
That's why I'm tired.
yeah, you've been joining it at 5 a.m., haven't you?
Yep. 3 times a week.
Well, you might like to know we just confirmed we're hiring a full-time manager for the whole project, and she's a really wonderful young woman in Brazil, and she's got a background in online education and managing startups and running teams and marketing, online marketing, which is kind of a perfect fit. So we've been sort of talking to her for the last couple of weeks about it, and we just decided, yep, we're doing it. So that's going to add a lot to the whole thing and take a bit of, well, I'm hoping it, rather than just expanding the project, it'll take a little bit of pressure off the three of us who've been running it sort of as a, without getting paid. So that's going to be good. So that's actually kind of exciting. Right, welcome, Advaita. Very good. Advaita, we're just checking in. You want to say hello?
Namaskar.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Anything exciting happened for you this week? Nothing happened. I was just so now our planetary leadership training rather. The manager is Brazilian, so you've got the inside track there, Advaita. You can plot with her in Portuguese. All right, looks like this is us. It's a really small group today. We're going to do some kirtan. So I'm going to turn on original sound. And any tune requests? Any favorites? Hopefully I can play them.
I have one that's starting in my head. Of course, I never know the names of these things.
Just tell me the tune.
How's the rest of it go? Or the one that starts off the Dharma cast has been in my head lately too, but now I can't get it going.
I don't know what and Advaita's asking for the dinosaur tune, which I love, but
oh, that's a good one.
But it's kind of hard to sing. It goes really high.
That's true.
So I'm not going to attempt that, especially because I had a very slight cold, and I think I've sort of nipped it in the bud, but it's still got a little kind of catching in my throat, so I'm not going to do anything ambitious. So I'm a pretty useless request taker. Oh, I know that one. Oh, that's lovely. And it's playable. Yeah, great. And it's got a name, and I don't remember what it is. So this is from one of the early Soja ones, actually, one of their very first. Just keep your eyes closed. Remember to sit straight with your hands in your lap, thumbs together. Let the mantra continue in your mind. But since all of you are initiated, you have your first lesson at least. You can go into your regular meditation practice. But just remember one thing, when you're practicing your first lesson, when you get to the point where you're repeating your mantra, just take the idea or take the perspective that you are listening to the mantra. The mantra is coming from within you. It's arising from within you. And remember, don't forget to focus on the meaning, the feeling of the mantra, of losing yourself in the limitless world or the limitless realm of bliss or consciousness. Kerala, Bhavanam 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 Kerala. Namaskar. You can just take a deep breath and open your eyes when you want to. So we don't have a full class tonight, but there's something I wanted to air my opinion on. I'd be very happy to hear yours, and that is drugs. So this is something that if you know anything about the part of the world I live in, which is Northern California, just pretty close to Stanford University and across the bay from UC Berkeley and just 30 miles south of San Francisco. So this was one of the places where there was a big, you can say, sort of culture, a very big cultural sort of awakening, you could call it. I don't know if that's the right word, but in the 1960s, especially late 60s or mid to late 60s, there was a lot of experimentation with drugs in this part of the world, and it propagated and it became part of the music and part of the culture of a whole generation to some degree. And it spread all the way to New Zealand, and we heard about it there, but a lot of it came from here. And so there's some pretty interesting stories about people who had experiences on drugs and then felt, okay, this is something spiritual, and that has led them to some sort of spiritual practice. And that's kind of part of what happened to me and many other people I know. So that's like, and it was this process, if you like, was rather well described by the famous saying from Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley was a brilliant, well, he won a Nobel Prize for literature, so he was a pretty good writer. And he wrote Brave New World. You might have studied it in school. And Island, Brave New World was his dystopia. It was like the kind of terrible thing that could happen to the world in the future. And Island was his utopia. That was the opposite. And he wrote these amazing books. But he experimented quite a bit, especially with mescaline, which is the active ingredient in the cactus that grows in Mexico and Central America, and it's used by shamans and so forth to induce spiritual experiences. So it's a very powerful hallucinogen, similar to psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in so-called magic mushrooms. So these are organic versions, and then you've got the laboratory version, which was LSD, and then now I think there's certainly a number of new ones since then. Oh, you just read Island, Karun? I love that book. I thought it was wonderful. So there was this big sort of blurring over it continues, this sort of blurring between the experience of taking these drugs to induce an experience and the practice to lead to a higher state of consciousness. And I come across people all the time, especially in California, who I think are quite confused about this. So I actually came across some people in Costa Rica. They were from Russia or somewhere, and they'd set up this kind of vegan commune in Costa Rica. And there was a young couple there, and they seemed pretty nice. They were a bit argumentative, but they were nice enough. And but they seemed to me to be a bit confused. And we had quite a long conversation, and they explained to me that they had sort of seen the light by taking ayahuasca, which is, as you probably know, this hallucinogen that they use in Brazil, and it's actually legal because it's part of a shamanistic ritual. And the people that practice this says, well, this is part of our religious practice, so you can't ban it. This is an old tradition. So the government allows them to use it. So people go to Brazil to go on these ayahuasca experiences. And from what I've learned about it, it's really not, it's pretty dangerous, very powerful. And I kind of feel like, I get the impression that people are taking this idea of, this shamanistic tradition and then using it for entertainment and recreation, basically. No, Island, that doesn't end happily. Yeah, I remember. It's so cute. I'm, as you can probably tell, I'm pretty skeptical about a lot of the people, that this idea that people claim that this is some sort of, I don't know, a desirable thing to continue taking. Having said that, it certainly, I took LSD a couple of times myself, and it was hugely significant opening of my eyes. But what Aldous Huxley said about this whole thing, he says, these type of substances, they can open the doors of perception, but they can't take you through. And for that, he said, you have to do the work. You have to meditate. You have to follow, lead a spiritual life, a good life, and follow the great teachings and live it and really put it into practice. So, of course, that's what I've tried to do with my life and what I teach. But I still see a lot of people now, sort of, well, now you've got this whole thing of microdosing and using microdoses of, I think, is it MDM? I can't remember what it stands for. This is the latest version. And using it in therapy. Now, I actually think it might be plausible that a very tiny amount used really judiciously might help someone who's got a deep psychological problem under guidance from someone who really knows what they're talking about. But I have a deep distrust of the whole phenomena because I've experienced it myself. I know how alluring this is. I mean, LSD it's fantastic. It's really fantastic if you have a good trip. If you're lucky enough not to have a bad trip, which is horrific. It's a waking nightmare for people who've experienced that. I haven't. My brother had a really horrific trip. I know people who've seen had demons appear to them like real, and it's very traumatic. So, not a toy. Which is, of course, the problem. Is that a lot of the tendency is to play with it because it's very, very alluring. It can be a very beautiful experience, and it's enormously immersive, you could say. I mean, we were kind of cautious. We were reasonably sane, middle-class kids, and so we didn't really want to become drug addicts. So we took we had one trip between us. We took a quarter of it. So we took a quarter of a dose, and that quarter of a dose. This was LSD. This quarter of a dose, and it's just a tiny drop on a piece of blotting paper, and we cut that in four. So it's a really small amount of this substance, this liquid. That quarter of a dose was enough for me to be completely in not another world. I was in this world, but incredibly high and in this very powerful experience for 8 hours. Okay, and that 8 hours felt subjectively longer than the entire rest of my life, which was at that point about 19, I think. Yeah, I was 19. So that gives you an idea of how potent this stuff is, which to me is a kind of alarm signal, because if I'd taken 4 times that much, that's a normal trip, and there are stories of people taking a lot more than that, and many people I know have literally destroyed their minds with this stuff. I know a guy he's been meditating most of his life, but he is chronically depressed, and he attributes it to his abuse of psilocybin. And there are many, many, many cases like that, and even worse. So, I always really caution people about this stuff, and I caution people because, as I said, it is incredibly alluring, and it can be an incredible experience. It's extremely tempting, and I Oscar Wilde, what he famously said, I can resist everything except temptation. So human beings, we're like that. I mean he really kind of summed up one side of the human condition in that one. So I'm really concerned, actually, about the increasing tendency for people to experiment with this. I meet young people who are experimenting with it. I've met university professors who actually advocate it to their students in Berkeley, and I was kind of horrified, because people listen to them. People think, oh, if the professor says it's okay, he's a scientist, he knows what he's talking about. So they legitimize it, and I think that's incredibly irresponsible. And so I think one thing that a lot of people say about it is, well, the research is showing us now that we have these receptors in our brain. I don't understand very well, but it seems to be something like this. It seems like we have some kind of receptors in our brain for some chemical which is actually matches some of the active ingredient in some of these hallucinogenic drugs, and they sort of plug into this chemical slot, and we get high. I was watching a talk by Sadhguru. He's a very well-known spiritual teacher, great yogi, and he was talking about this, and he said, the conclusion that people tend to draw from this is, we're human beings have always smoked whatever it is, taking these drugs. We're sort of designed to take drugs. He says, no, it's not like that. We are designed to be able to produce these chemicals within our bodies through spiritual practice. And there's a substance in yoga, it's known as amrit. It means the divine nectar. And the tradition says that when you attain a certain state and you follow a certain discipline like fasting and meditating and really go deeply into it, this substance is secreted from the pineal gland in the brain, and you experience incredible spiritual ecstasy. And there are many depictions and stories of great saints and yogis and highly spiritually evolved people who are high all the time, like really high. Like, I'm sort of happy most of the time, and I get some kind of high, but these people are like off their heads, okay, not allowed to drive kind of high. And, there are so many individuals like that, well, a limited number, but it's what's happening is that they, through their spiritual discipline and their focus, they're actually training their bodies to produce these chemicals naturally. So the plant version is like a mimicry. It's like, that's the artificial version, basically. The original design of the body is that we are supposed to evolve into yogis, or evolve through yoga or similar equivalent practices. The last thing I want to say about it is the role is the shamanistic, the role of these substances in shamanism. Most shamanistic traditions, or I would say many shamanistic traditions, make some use of hallucinogenic plants or substances, and there are quite a few different ones in different parts of the world. But the way that it's supposed to be used, even in shamanism, which is, I don't think it's necessary at all, actually, but I think at least they sort of try to use it responsibly. It's not entertainment. It's used under the guidance of the shaman to wake somebody up, and then they learn, then they know what they're supposed to be aiming for in their meditation or their vision quest or the next sort of phase of their practice. So it's used as a catalyst or something to as a a door opener, as Huxley said, but not as something you should take repetitively, and especially to the point where you're dependent on it, and that's the really dangerous version of it. So I think in shamanism that's widespread, but yoga evolved out of shamanism. Yoga in this in South India, where meditation and all these practices of Kundalini and the methodology to naturally learn how to secrete this Amrit and get high naturally. That was what the meditation practices were designed for. So out of shamanism, a more evolved, more inward-looking practice evolved, which is the root of Tantra, and which was not dependent on anything external. And that's actually a big part of Shiva's teachings. You made a nice... Feel free to turn your mic on, folks. You're all... there's only just a few of us.
Yeah. I'm having internet connection issues. Yeah.
Yeah, tell us. I can hear you.
So I was just commenting, having just read Island, yeah, one of the things they did is I forgot what they called the drug, but they would only use it on very special occasions.
Right.
Part of the ceremony of becoming an adult was one, or maybe a couple would use it to, again, remind them of where they're trying to get to in the meditation.
So that's a sort of a shamanistic version. I mean, yeah, Huxley was sort of somewhere. He obviously studied shamanism a lot, and that's the way that these drugs are used in a controlled way. It's an example of that in the shamanistic tradition. My thesis is that actually we evolved beyond that quite a while ago, when we developed the practice of Tantra, to the point where it's not actually necessary, and it entails a risk. So my view on this is that there was actually no need to take that unnecessary risk. In the Buddhist tradition, the Buddhist teachers and Buddha himself, they talk about this, and they're absolutely against taking any kind of drug, and it's for the reason that, well, I'll give you an example. There was a researcher, and Sadhguru was talking about this as well. It's quite a neat talk. He's very funny, actually, sometimes. He was saying there was a researcher in the US. He was actually Israeli in the 1980s, I think, 70s and 80s. And he had a grant and permission to research marijuana and its effect on the mind. And he was getting like a lot of it every year, like, I don't know, 10 kilos or something a year. And he was doing all this research, and he kept doing this for like 10 years. And then in the US, they sort of upped the ante and they changed the laws and started focusing on users, and which is a big disaster, as you know, the famous drug wars. And they cut off his permission. They said, look, this guy's he hadn't produced any results. He'd been researching it, getting his 10 kilos of marijuana a year, and he hadn't shown any papers. So they thought, okay, this guy seems to be up to something. We don't think he's genuine anymore. And they cut off his permission. So he went back to Israel and continued his research for another 4 years. And then he actually did produce a lot of research. He had a ton of data. He just hadn't finished. And his main conclusion, and it was very solid, he had lots of, and you got to remember, this is in the 1980s. He didn't have the research tools that we have now. It was much more difficult. And, far less accurate. But his overriding conclusion was that smoking marijuana has a harmful effect on your ability to make clear-minded and good decisions. And that effect can last for years. He said that even if you just smoke marijuana for a month, it will impair your decision-making ability for up to 4 years. So that was what he thought. And so I know there's a ton of, there's lots of people who kind of want to, I would say there's a lot of very biased research into marijuana these days in favor of marijuana and in favor of cannabis and the medicinal uses of it. And I think I know there are medicinal uses for it, but that's usually the substance, the oil from the plant without the THC, which is the active drug mind-altering ingredient. So I think there's a lot of a lot of people are trying to use research to justify them taking drugs for fun. So I'm pretty skeptical about a lot of this research, I'm afraid. But at the same time, I think that the medical marijuana has helped a lot of people, definitely, and especially guitarists. And ironically enough, Eric Clapton uses the oil on his hands because he was having a lot of pain and having trouble playing, and he said it completely revived his ability to play. So, plant medicine has a role, but taking powerful drugs for fun doesn't seem like a very good idea to me. So that's my take on it anyway. Whatever. I have a big argument / debate, which I'm going to have with one of my dear friends who actually studied shamanism deeply for many years. So he knows a lot more than I do. So we're going and he also knows Ananda philosophy extremely well. So at some point we're going to have a formal interview / conversation about this one. So I'm sure I'll learn something. So I hope to come out of that one a wiser man. So there you go. That's about all I'm going to tell you today, folks. You know what the yogi said, don't trade drugs. So, I think we're heading off. Anyone to say goodbye? Namaskar.
Okay.
See you next week.
Namaskar.
Namaskar, Dada. Thank you.
Good to see
Thanks.
you. Good to catch up. Enjoy your have a wonderful birthday, Kailash. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank
I'm
you.
not going to give you a washing machine. Doesn't mean I don't love you, okay?
All right.
Namaskar.
All right. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.